I got into science because kids were asking me questions. I was the person that had time to help them find the answers, because when I was a kid, I had a lot of questions, and most of the adults in my life were too busy. I didn't understand why certain people weren't allowed in certain industries or in certain labs when they were doing those things already. They just weren't getting credit for it. Education needs to be radically revolutionized. There's no way that the Fab Lab will not be here to participate.
Welcome to Producer's Corner. I'm with Lindsey Murphy from the Fab Lab, aka Crazy Aunt Lindsey. I'm a longtime fan, and we're very excited to talk to her today. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Lindsey, can you tell us a little bit about your program?
Yeah, so the Fab Lab with Crazy Aunt Lindsey is the best, aka most beloved kids science show on YouTube. It's one of the oldest or longest running independently produced kids science shows. And it takes everyday science concepts and turns them into fabulous DIY projects that kids can do at home with their families. So we do things like, one of our latest episodes, we designed an entire cookout around the Juneteenth holiday, but using that as a backdrop to introduce ourselves to things like genetics, epigenetics, extracting DNA from a strawberry, but then using those strawberries to make jam, so we can experience science and not just have it downloaded into our brains.
I remember one of the shows you did was how to make butter.
Yes, yeah.
I remember because that's been like a DIY video that I like to show people. Mm-hmm. But so sometimes it's like how to do something, sometimes it's explaining it, but you guys learn by doing it, sounds like.
Everything, yeah. Every single thing that we do, so in the instance of the butter making episode, making butter is a very practical, cultural tradition for all of us. Most of us love butter. Yeah. But that process, it involves a lot of scientific processes. It can introduce us into cellular structure, globules, protein structure, emulsions, all of these science terms and things that we use in other places, but also making a really delicious thing that is very functional to make pancakes or bread or whatever you choose to use butter for that particular day. So it's, what are those things? What are those sort of mundane seeming things that we do and use and maybe automatically just do whatever we're doing with it, but exploring the entire world of science that it can introduce us to. Just finding the deeper meaning in things, paying closer attention to what it is that we're actually doing, appreciating people who, for the past however many hundreds of years, have been shaking butter out of milk. Because I don't know, just my mind goes to, to get butter, it's so easy to just go to the grocery store and pull it off a shelf and go to the checkout and not think about it ever again. But for hundreds of years, thousands of years, we've been engaging in this process of extracting and pulling apart and inventing and seeing what's inside things and figuring it out. So anyway, that's a spiel. But yes, it's taking the mundane and finding the magic.
Yeah. And plus globule is a fun word to say.
Globule is 100% my favorite type of molecule.
My son, we talk about their globules are a lot of things that we, his oatmeal. Can you please pick up that globule and eat it? Yes. I love it. So tell me a little bit about sort of your relationship to science and what inspired it.
Yeah. My relationship to science and what inspired it. Science at the end of the day is paying attention and asking questions and collecting information based off of different questions and the answers that arise. I think science, at least if you speak about it politically, science can be a really polarizing concept. If you look at the history of science, it was funded by the church for a long time, and then some questions were a little bit too curious, and so there was a separation of science and spirituality. Science is just asking questions and looking for the answers. And as far as I'm concerned, we are engaged in the scientific process all the time at some stage. And this is just like the scientific method to me is just a point of awareness. Anyway, I could go off on a whole tangent of what science is, but if we're talking about biology and all that and teaching it to kids, I got into science because kids were asking me questions, and I wasn't the type of person as a babysitter in that particular phase of my life. I was the person that had time to help them find the answers because when I was a kid, I had a lot of questions, and most of the adults in my life were too busy to answer them or help me find the answers or whatever. And so I grew up with parents who said, "Oh, you have a question? Go and look in the encyclopedia or go check out the dictionary." Some years later, "Oh, Google it on the internet." And so my relationship to science was very organic. I had a lot of questions, and I learned, or at least I was encouraged to reach out to the different resources to find the answers and not just settle for some, dismissive topical response. And then when kids came into my life and they started asking questions, it was really fun to impart that same experience. So science is it's a thing that happened naturally in my life. I think it's hilarious sometimes that, Harvard University will introduce me as a science communicator, or like it's funny to be, like it's just funny to me. I don't have a degree in it. I didn't think I was very scientific. Growing up, I heard that girls weren't really into science, and I'm like, I don't know. I think girls ask the most questions. but, but it's just been a really organic process, and stepping forward through the Fab Lab for the last almost 15 years. And getting these like official, stamps of approval from these institutions as a science communicator is just something that happened.
You told me a little bit about the background of like how you started like as a babysitter, right? And then how did tell me about that sort of evolution from from babysitter to having a show.
Yeah. So before I was a babysitter, I was in my career really early. I was at MTV Networks at 19. I went to community college, and then I was recruited into a role to help build video on demand. And then I did that for a couple of years, and then blah, blah, blah. And then I ended up in like a executive level role at 25, and by 26, I was like, oh, I hate life. And I don't think I'm supposed to hate life. Like, because I had all the things. I had 6 figures, I had the German car, I had the fancy friends. And I was like, this isn't working. So I quit. And in order to make ends meet, I babysat. I lived in a fabulous community of women who were like, you need to figure your stuff out. Like, move into her pool house, grab the keys to her car, and take all of our kids to the park, like that's your job now while you take this breather, which I'm forever grateful for. And so when I pulled up to the season of life where I was a babysitter, I had like 7 years of career under my belt working in entertainment. So when I was babysitting for the people that I essentially worked with in New York. Like I went from working in the boardrooms with them to working in their backyards with their kids. And so I was babysitting, as I mentioned. The kids would ask questions. The part of me that was an 8, 9, 10-year-old that had a ton of questions for the adults in my life who never had time to help me find the answers got activated. And so I just started helping the kids find answers to stuff. Most homes at that time only had one desktop computer in like a family area. Smartphones had not been invented yet, which seems so crazy to talk about as as someone who feels very young in their heart. But smartphones were a thing. iPads weren't a thing. It was your home computer, it was your television, and it was the library. And so I just started helping kids to find answers or get curious about the world around them, turning walks home from school into nature walks and discovering the different types of rocks and plants and trees. Using those things to make granola when we get home to explain what a carbohydrate is, and needing carbohydrates for energy. So we can go on this run to keep our bodies fit. So really connecting the dots for kids of everything, like how nature is you and you are nature. And anyway, remind me your question one more time.
So how did that evolve into the show eventually?
So that all was happening. As that is happening, as I'm babysitting, I'm also, trying to achieve my like dreams of like working in fashion. So I ended up going in and out of New York, doing some writing for some magazines. And then I got picked up to do a job with Xbox. And that was going to send me all across like between Seattle and Los Angeles for like this chunk of time. So my babysitting chapter was going to come to a close. And a couple of the parents got together and threw me a going away party. And they were like, hey, have you ever heard of YouTube? And I'm like, yeah, heard of YouTube. And they're like, it would be such a great way to keep in touch if you were to like make videos of the activities that you do with our kids. And I was like, oh, that's a cute idea, but I didn't have a smartphone. I didn't have a camera. I didn't even have a laptop at that point. Or did I have a laptop? That might have been the year I got a laptop. And so all of these people that I had been working with in my before life, before babysitting, who I'm now babysitting for them in their homes, who are all in media, and social media as we know it now is getting born. And so when my life was shifting, one of the parents was like, this is a cute idea. We would love to keep in touch with you now that you're going to be traveling. You should make some videos. And a year later, when I was, the project with Xbox was over and I like panicked because I'm like, oh, how am I going to get money? I was like, oh, go back to babysitting. And I was like, oh, I haven't heard from them in a year. I can't just like cold reach out to them because I need something. I have to reach out with something, like for a reason. So I called my best friend at the time who had my first goddaughter in Weehawken, New Jersey, and went over and made Play-Doh in her kitchen, and sent that video out to the 11-person email list of parents I used to babysit for. Like, hey guys, haven't heard from you in a while. Here's a video of me making butter. And also, if you need babysitting, I'm available. So it was really kind of just like, it was just like an intersection of things at a really interesting time in history when media was changing. So that's how it got started. I was a babysitter. Someone suggested I make a YouTube video. And so as my calendar filled up, and I got back into the zone with my kids in New Jersey, anytime a babysitting night was coming up, I'd get a phone call. Back then we called each other on the phone, and it would be one of the parents, and I'd be like, hey, Mary, and she'd be like, oh, hey, Ellie has a question for you. I'm like, okay. Ellie gets on the phone. Hey, Crazy Aunt Lindsey, you're coming over tomorrow, right? Yeah, I'll be picking you up from school. Okay. Are we gonna make a video? Yeah, we'll make a video. We'll make a video about, well, I have this coloring book. Okay, whatever you want to do, I'll see you tomorrow. So the kids would ask me to make videos because it was they thought it was fun. They loved seeing their neighbors. They loved seeing themselves. They loved seeing themselves on, and it was just this one. I made Play-Doh one time with my goddaughter, just thinking it was like a cute thing to do. And then the kids would see the videos and they would hear that I was coming over and they would want to be in a video. So for 2 years, I was just for the first 2 years of the show, I'm actively babysitting. And then I moved across the country to Portland. And in 2014, I went about the business of raising some money to finish editing some old content that I had made with kids in New Jersey. Parents were like, hey, did you ever do that? And I'm like, you know what? I'll just finish it up. I have all these hours. Like, I'll just finish it up. And so I went through the activity of raising money, and where I was working at the time, they found out and they were very supportive. And then the Fab Lab had a whole new life. It went from this little, Montclair, New Jersey, New York thing that I was doing just to do to like a Portland thing. And then it just grew. It just grew. It just was the most organic and almost bizarre experience. But that's what happened.
That's amazing. It's so cool to see that, like, it started with like 11 kids watching your video, and from you babysitting and transitioning to like babysitting while actually doing the video. Can you tell me a little bit about where the program is now?
Yeah. Well, I cannot believe it. I pinch myself all the time to have been doing the show for now, in November, it'll be 14 years from the first upload of a video. Like, I cannot believe that I've done something for 14 years. And I certainly can't believe that, this last season that we did was in partnership with OMSI, the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. We had a $250,000 budget granted to us by the Marie Landrum Foundation. We never like that. It's just mind blowing. Like, it was all, like, up until then, it was almost exclusively volunteer or crowdfunded. The most we'd ever had to work with was anywhere from $100, and then I think $1,000, and then $10,000, and then $250,000 to do a real show. It was just mind blowing. Working with an institution like OMSI was incredible. Having nonprofit partners like Kairos School is amazing. The Department of Education in Oregon is now, funding parts of this to turn it into after school programming. I pinch myself all of the time. I pinch myself all the time because it's just not something I ever could have seen coming. But it's just amazing what happens when you keep moving forward.
Tell me,
if I cry at some point, please, I'm just
weeping is fine.
It's just, yeah.
We are totally a weeping acceptable program. So it's amazing what you've done, and it's worth celebrating by crying. You're going to make me cry.
Does anyone have a tissue? Thanks.
Do we want to pause for a second for a tissue?
It's okay.
Okay. I want to ask you kind of talked about this a little bit before. You said that something like, it's like girls can't be this, or,
yeah.
And mm-hmm. That's your mission, right? Part of it is mm-hmm. to teach STEM and have identities that have not usually been represented well mm-hmm. in STEM. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about that and why that's so important to you and to everybody that watches?
I think it goes beyond STEM. I grew up in a time where binaries were real. And I love, as difficult as it is for us in the world with everything that's happening and changing and the things we're becoming aware of that have been happening for a very long time. I grew up in a world of binaries. And I love that we are challenging definitions of things. I love that we are almost, opening the floodgates of opportunity for more people in a myriad of ways, or trying to. But it wasn't like that for a long time. And I grew up marginalized and sidelined. And I just never understood why. When I would hear, in school, I would hear one history, but at home, I would receive a totally different history, and I didn't understand why they didn't match. And there always seemed to be contention among those things. And I didn't understand how everyone didn't know that we've all already contributed to these things. The number of African Americans, or in some cases, Aboriginal Americans, or women that invented things that they didn't get credit for because the way the world was set up at the time. Believe me, I hate talking about race. I super, super do hate talking about race, but we live in a in a reality where race is the thing. White men would get the credit for things that their wives were doing, or in some cases, the people that they owned were doing. And history books would completely pretend like that wasn't a thing. And I didn't understand why certain people weren't allowed in certain industries or in certain labs or in certain libraries or in certain companies or in certain roles when they were doing those things already. They just weren't getting credit for it. And so to me, it is about not just like getting those industries or getting those opportunities availed to more people. It's about presenting the truth that we've already been doing those things. We just haven't been getting the credit. We just haven't been getting paid for it. I would hear, you can't do this and you can't do that. But it's like, but my grandmother is already doing it. And she does it better than you. But she's poorer than you. So I don't know. I just, it's much deeper to me than just, let's get more diversity in these places. It's already been there. We've just as a collective allowed ourselves to withhold the truth, and who gets to enjoy the fruits of their labor. So this is maybe a bridge to that. It's much more to me. It's about really not leveling the playing field, but taking the blinders off, taking the whatever that thing is called. The mask off of our eyes.
No, the wool.
The wool,
yes.
It's pulling the wool from off of our eyes to see that we've all already been here.
I can't say more. Thank you. I'm curious, part of this is, producing the show. What challenges have you had, or what do you like about it?
Yeah, I mean, I love everything about I love getting the kids there, like getting the kids on set, because these are real kids. Like, these are real kids in most cases. These are like kids in my neighborhood, kids in my building. Like, these are kids, my friends' kids. Like, I know them. And so it's really fun to spend the time. It's really fun to show them the world of production, because a lot of these kids look at YouTube videos and they just think, it's just there. And it's like, no, this actually takes a lot of energy, and it takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of this, and it takes a lot of that. And so getting to show kids that while also introducing them to these scientific concepts in a way that maybe they wouldn't have ever had access to or known before, is fun. I love how like innovative and creative I get to be. I love what happens when I'm at brunch or something and I come across a recipe and I'm like, oh, this looks perfect for genetics explanation. Like, I love that creative process. I love sharing it with the kids. I love getting on set and doing the thing. My least favorite thing is like probably like getting to I wish I was an editor. Like, if I was an editor, I probably would have no problems. But I'm way too ADHD to focus on editing as much as I really want to. And so raising funds to get those people on board, or developing the relationships to have volunteers come on board the first 7 years of the show, it was pretty much all volunteer. And so, the show has been around for 14 years and we've got, I think, 70 or 80 videos. And we should have so many more, but having full-time jobs, having to raise money, like do all this stuff, like I would love. And it's interesting because like we live in an era of social media where it's expected that you are an advertising agency, a production house, a marketing company. Like, you're expected to be so much, and it's not real. It's not sustainable. And so having the funds to get it done, getting the funds, I love fundraising, but then like realizing that like with the grant world, like there's a really weird thing that happens there where you're not eligible. And if you are eligible, you got to be in good with the, like, it's just getting resources to make something so loving and so what I keep hearing people say that they want. It's like, I feel like gaslit half the time. Like, how can you say that you want this, but you will not resource it, or you won't resource it until I make more?
Like it doesn't make it. It's just like it's really weird. And then it's just getting the resources is my least favorite part. But when I get the resources, the whole thing is my favorite part.
I totally understand.
Yes.
And you have to kind of meet the requirements and, X amount of people served. And it's difficult, right?
It just seems like a moving target, because it's like, in my particular case, I think over 1 million people have seen my videos. Like, how is it, like, what's needed, what is needed?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then at the same time, there are certain people I've had meetings with over the years who will say, oh, well, keep doing your best and we'll talk about it later. But then they'll literally plagiarize my content or making it, like, there are several media projects that are very prominent that I had meetings with them, and within 6 months, projects that look just like what we talked about are born. So getting your content stolen is really the worst. It's been really hard. And that's part of where the emotion comes from, because doing this for 14 years, it's something that comes from my heart. Truly, it comes from deep in my heart, from the purest place of wanting to introduce kids to who they are. And then to see it taken over by capitalism, or in some cases, we don't really want a Black woman to do this, so we're going to let a white woman do it. We're going to take your idea and put a white woman in place. And give her all the resources and the best producers and but good job on raising that $50,000. It's just it hurts. And it's almost like that thing that I was talking about earlier, where we have a huge history of people who invented things that they don't get credit for. And we still do it now. Like, we still do it right now. We are still stealing from the purest places to make companies very wealthy and to control the message and the images. And as a project that intentionally goes against that, and to have it happen to this project, it's just, ugh. This is my life's work, but it's also a deep labor of love.
In that vein, what would you like to see? I mean, you are already big, right? But what if you could, what if you wanted to take it further? Mm-hmm. Do you want to take it further? Do you want it to stay, what do you want?
I'm going to be Mr. Rogers. Like, I don't know if I'll be, like, I don't know what that looks like in 2020, whatever, I don't know what that looks like, but like, this is my life. This is it. This is me. And I do many other things, believe me, like I do many other things with my life, but the Crazy Aunt Lindsey, the Fab Lab, the heart of what it is, like, this is what's needed. Like, education, our world is crumbling. Education needs to be radically revolutionized. How we relate to each other and see each other needs to be radically revolutionized. How we raise our children, how we go to work. Like, we are changing as a society, as a global society. And there's no way that the Fab Lab will not be here to participate in the meaningful evolution of how we educate and relationship. So I hope that I am as old as Mr. Rogers, celebrating my 1,000th show or whatever it is. And I don't care if it's me doing one episode a year or figuring out how to get a team to do it every week. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's like saying, Lindsay, when are you going to stop breathing? You're going to stop breathing? You're going to start breathing through your toenails soon? Like, that's like, there's just, I see this going for as long as I'm around.
Well, you're already a superstar to us. If people want to get a hold of you, mm-hmm. How do they reach out? How do they find out about you?
Thefablab.com. There's only one. People keep trying to buy it from me.
All right. Any kind of Instagram-y kind of social media handles that you want? Or?
So thefablab.com will take you everywhere. I'm on YouTube. If you just search the Fab Lab, I will come up with the beaker and bow. And then on Instagram, it's the Fab Lab HQ also. So YouTube and Instagram, Fab Lab HQ, and on TikTok, the Fab Lab.
Okay. Is there any parting words you want to leave us with?
No, thanks for being around. I hope whoever lays their eyes on this, I hope they check out the Fab Lab. I hope they fall in love with it. I hope they support it on Patreon and share it with every kid, teacher, parent that's in their life.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
My son's of age to start watching it, so I'm excited for it.
Nice.
Thank you so much for watching Producer's Corner. We are the show that lets local media producers talk about the media that they create in our area. And if you want to follow us, you can follow us at MetroEast Media. I think that's on Instagram. And then you can also check us out on metroeast.org and check out our website. We're a nonprofit community media center that teaches people to tell their own stories. I'm so grateful you were here. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And you too. Grateful you guys are watching. Thank you.